What's up, everybody? It's the Isaac Yardbird Podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by Mountaineer Brand. If you got a beard on your face or a bald head above your neck, you need to go to mountaineerbrand.com and use my code ISAC for 15% off your entire order. Beard oil, beard wash, beard conditioner, all kinds of things. If you need a brush for it, straighten it out, you got it, and you get 15% off with my code EYESAC at mountaineerbrand.com. And also a big shout out to the new addition of the studio, Blue Dream Candle from Scents by Yaya. Go to, I guess it's scentsbyyaya.com and get you a candle. Ben Johnson.
What's happening, buddy?
I'm just excited to be here, man.
Me too. It's always an honor to be here in your wonderful presence.
Hey, thanks. I always love when you're a guest. I always love talking to you regardless, but it's special when everybody else gets to benefit from it.
Have benefit?
Oh.
That was funny.
It was. They might tune out
I promise.
after that
I promise it won't be that cheesy. I promise.
I like a little cheesy. This girl I worked with, she got a pizza today. And it was, she took off the marinara, she got Alfredo, extra cheese, and feta on it.
Did you say this was on a pizza?
Yes.
That's kind of different.
Among other things, but like she loves too much cheese.
Okay. Hey, all right. Better than anchovies.
I tried one of those for the first time.
Why?
So, the reason is I didn't know what they were. And I didn't. I've heard of them, and I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. And then they were like, yeah, it's fish. And I didn't know. I was, what?
Usually whole fish.
Yes. I was like, there's no way. I want to try that. And so I was like, can I try anchovy? And they took it out. And sure enough, little fish.
Now, when did this happen?
At work about 3 months ago.
Okay, because I was going to say, if this was today, that explains a lot about what was going on before this podcast.
No. Today was just too much of everything.
There are some things that I believe are not meant to go in your mouth, and a whole anchovy is one of them.
Really?
Yes.
Do you like fish?
No. Well, yeah, I do like fish, actually.
What's the difference?
I don't want no whole fish and the bones and the weird stuff on my pizza.
It has bones in it?
Yeah, it's got bones in it. They're soft little bones, but unless they're like filleted out, yeah. It's like a whole fish. You got the organs and everything.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's nasty.
I feel like a giant.
It's nasty. It's delicious.
That's different. Okay. Yeah, it was terrible. It just tasted like salt. It's like eating a packet of salt.
That's nasty.
Fair enough. Well, we're not here to talk about anchovies and gluttony today. Although I don't know. I got to work on that. Because I do it too. I do it on purpose, where I eat too much. But if it's a big spread and I'm excited for it and been looking forward to it, I'll say going into it, I'll be like, I'm going to eat until I feel terrible.
Okay. I mean, hey, at least you're not a big person.
No.
So I'll go in a room and I'll look at the spread, and I gain 10 pounds. That's really how it goes. It feels like. Yeah. Now, my brother's kind of like you. I have two brothers. My middle brother's kind of like you. He can go in, eat an entire buffet. I remember when we were kids, he would get in trouble because he'd take the entire thing of ice cream and eat it all, and never gain a pound. Meanwhile, I'm watching him eat the ice cream, and I gain all the weight he did. It's not fair.
People just built different, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. It's not right. It's not fair.
We all got stuff. Well, look, you were built back in the day.
Yeah.
I've seen the pictures. I've seen the proof.
Back in high school, I was 320 pounds.
Okay.
It was huge.
Yeah.
When I went to college, the weight training coach was my advisor, and he was like, you need some PE credits. And
go ahead and shout him out. He's been on here.
Of course.
Yeah.
Coach Carl Bryan, Coach B, the one and only, the man, the legend. Honestly, one of my all-time favorite people, and I would say that even if we weren't here doing a podcast. That is a wonderful, amazing human being. He inspires people, and he helped me a lot.
Yeah,
that's true. I would say he's probably in the top 5 people in my whole life who probably helped me out, and he don't even probably know that.
Dang.
But he got me in weight training. He showed me that physical fitness didn't have to be something I was scared of. And starting in his weight training class, and I continued it after we were done, but I lost over 130 pounds on my own, doing old-fashioned eating right and exercise. And I got ripped for the first time in my life. Now, it lasted about a year and a half, and now I'm somewhere in between that and where I was, but I'm a lot healthier.
Yeah.
I did learn how to do a pull-up because of them, and at one point in my life that was a thing. But yeah, things change.
Yeah. What's one of your like biggest struggles? A struggle going in with like eat, and it's funny because I'll say that one of mine's eating, and then people look at me and they're like, "Nuh-uh," but I eat a lot.
Well, I'm jealous.
But that, and then I also like eat myself until I feel bad. Obviously, it's not my biggest struggle, but it is something.
I would say I like sweets, and I like snacking, late night snacking. I mean, grab those potato chips and the Cheez-Its and the whatever else you happen to have, and leftover dinner that's in the refrigerator from whatever restaurant you might have went to. Oh, it's dangerous.
Why is it late night that it just makes food so much better?
I think part of it's the boredom, part of it's the not wanting to go to sleep, part of it's you might be watching something on TV or playing a game. It's just kind of, people in the house started going to sleep, or it's kind of chill, and it just feels right.
Yeah.
It just feels right.
But I feel like it tastes better.
Yeah, I agree. Because it's wrong.
Yeah, is that what it is?
It's wrong. That's why. The guilty pleasure.
A little taboo tasting. Right. Yeah, that's what it is. I bet that's what it is. That's with everything too,
That sounds like a really bad T-shirt.
Taboo tasting?
Yeah. Let's get T-shirts. I'll wear it.
Or, no, it should be like booty shorts. Like, right across the cheeks. Taboo tasting.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, I'm not going to wear them.
I will.
But, just to market them. I feel like that's a pretty big market for social media.
You can get, I'm thinking about the copper tone sunscreen logo, with the little girl and the puppy dog's kind of grabbing her swimsuit. I'm thinking we do something like that, me and you, with those shorts on. And
okay.
That would sell shorts to me.
Yeah. I'd buy them. What's your favorite thing, like late night snack?
Anything. Like I said, it's dangerous.
What's your go-to?
Because it all tastes good. Well, nothing healthy, no fruit
or
nothing
not.
like that.
Screw that.
I want like some soda, and not the diet stuff. I want the full calorie Pepsi.
Yeah.
And I don't know, Doritos are always good. The white cheddar Cheetos.
Ooh.
Gosh, I don't know.
Those are good.
You got fruit roll-ups or gummies in the house. You got to have a little bit of that to kind of mix up your textures.
A little sweet.
Yeah.
A little sour.
I mean, if you got
a little salty.
Yeah. All that good stuff.
Yeah. How about that Jesus guy though?
He's pretty okay.
Yes.
He's pretty okay.
Nice transition there. What do you think? I don't know. Do you think Jesus was ever? It's been a long day helping people out and walking around barefoot in the rocks and dirt, and he was like,
he had a big old appetite worth.
Yeah, it was like 11:17.
Oh my gracious!
And he was just laying there, head on a rock, just
I had the fish and the loaves, and now I'm just hungry.
I'd kill for 2 more fish.
Oh my gracious!
And a loaf of bread.
I mean, I just hope that didn't happen when he was getting tempted by the devil. So.
Yeah, well, I mean that's the other thing too, is like the Bible talks about how when God was man, he experienced what man experienced. So in reality, he could have struggled with that, and that could have been his thing, where it was like being tempted to eat late at night, or he was irking for that taboo tasting.
Oh my gracious, that is too funny. That is too funny.
So how did you find out about Jesus?
Well, I was going to say, all joking aside, that really is what we're here for today. Is it's kind of we want to keep it lighthearted, but that's really the nature of today's podcast, is to talk about something a little more on the serious side, and a little more something that's certainly important to me. All joking aside, once again, my faith has been a very big part of my life. I count myself as lucky for having parents who kind of guided me into that. Some people may view that as a negative, saying that people need to find their own faith. I'm going to disagree with that, because I feel like it's the parents' job to lead you in the right direction. And in my opinion, them taking me to church from an early age was the right thing to do. And I'm glad that it gave me that foundation to, whenever I was old enough to make my own choices, to branch off of.
Mm-hmm.
And then even at times in my life where I wasn't quite so sure about things, I was able to take my experiences and my memories and reassure myself that I was doing the right thing and following the right person, so to speak.
So you grew up in a Christian household?
Very much so. My house, there was no cussing in my house at all. There was no, we said bedtime prayers. We said prayers before we ate. It wasn't really ritualistic as much as it was just part of our lives.
Right.
And with that came a lot of happiness and a lot of, just good times with your family. It's kind of hard to describe how that kind of goes hand in hand unless you've experienced it. But, it was a very big part of our household growing up.
Did you ever? Because all right, so when I was little, first of all, I grew up in a very Christian household. My dad's a preacher, and has been my whole life, and so it was just, I don't know, it was kind of the norm where I was always at, and I don't know, I was still in single digit ages when I was like accepted God into my heart, Jesus into my heart.
Right, and I probably was too. Yeah,
but then, I mean, probably got baptized when I was a teenager. Still didn't really know. Like I wasn't firm in my faith because I was just plain and simple wasn't old enough to understand it.
Well, not only that, but I'm willing to bet if you're anything like me, you would probably hear these stories about people who knew the exact time and date of when they were saved because it was such a ground-shaking, earth-shattering moment for them because they were one thing and then became another. But for me, and I'm guessing it was kind of like with you, being raised in a Christian home, there really wasn't a big difference from the moment before and the moment after because it was already what you knew. Would you say that's fair?
No.
Okay. Tell me.
There's been like a big difference in my mindset and how I feel.
Okay.
I've been depressed. Probably, I could probably be diagnosed for depression from the ages of like 8 to 20 or something.
That's okay.
Like pretty bad.
That's a big thing to say and totally okay. Absolutely.
But I didn't vocalize it or make it real until one day I just cracked. Because anytime I went through something hard and I had I would start to complain just a little bit about it or question like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? I would get the same answer from my parents. And it was always, the worst things happen to other people. And
I know that.
Yeah.
I know that feeling.
Like it'll pass. You'll be okay. And just trust God. It'll be all right. And I got tired of hearing that.
Did it make you feel a little guilty for how you were feeling? Like there was something wrong with you?
Yeah.
Because I can relate to that.
Yeah.
You have things happen and that's the answer you get. And while there may be truth in it, it doesn't help you in your situation.
Right. That was a big thing. And so one day I cracked and I was like, I'm tired of hearing this shit. I'm tired of hearing it. Like, I know bad things happen to other people. Right now, bad things are happening to me, and I don't know how to get out of it. Like, I need some way to navigate this other than just a cliche thrown at me. And so I got really frustrated with that, and I started looking for answers outside of the ones they were giving me.
Okay. And
so I had already kind of, I wouldn't even say I fell out of my relationship with God because I didn't really have a great one to begin with. But in looking for answers elsewhere, I kind of put my relationship with God on the back burner.
Okay.
And so I literally just did that. I would open up books and read different people's beliefs, and I go to websites and read articles like, why did people believe this? Where do they get, what's the historical evidence behind it and the facts like that? And just kept searching and looking and trying to find something that was solid until I pretty much just spiraled. And in my own confusion and loneliness was when I finally let go and let God be God. And that's when it hit me. And then the shift happened, and it's crazy to say, but the depression went away like
that.
Sometimes, and I know a lot of people can relate to this, but in my experience, part of what makes you stronger is going through the tough times. You go through something like that, and then it makes you appreciate the good. It gives you something more to hang on to than just hearing it from other people and being told that's how you're supposed to be. When you experience it for yourself because you've been through things, it really does make it stronger for you, I think. And,
Absolutely.
I can certainly relate to that.
That's kind of my thing. I was just up and down like this, and then finally hit rock bottom, and then got pushed through those rocks, and God was like, I'm still here. I'm still waiting.
That's right, and He always will be.
Always. And I finally just reached up and was like, okay, let's do this. And go. Man, it's crazy. I don't even want to say like the actual things that happened that I saw and that I felt, because I know it'll turn people away from it, because they're like, oh, you were, whatever. But and I know it was real.
That's something that's hard to talk to people about who don't believe.
Yeah. And
it's something that it might sound a little controversial, but I've decided I'm not going to waste my time with people who don't care to hear it.
Right.
Some people may say, well, you're giving up on people. No, I'm not. I'm not. If you ever want to hear what I believe and you want to hear why I believe it, I will talk to you as much as you want to know. But I'm going to be the first to tell you I can't prove anything to you.
Right.
Because there's not really proof. That's what it means to be faith-based. And if you seek it for yourself, I think you'll find your own truth, and that's going to be what matters, more so than someone else trying to share with you their proof.
Yeah.
I mean, that's important, but you know what I mean? Like, kind of like I said, with going through something bad and it making it more meaningful and more to cling on to, you have to seek it for yourself. And it is faith-based. There is the proof that you're looking for. I mean, if God just revealed Himself and proved everything, then there wouldn't be any desire to follow Him, because it would be all just almost, I don't want to say like a dictatorship, but if you know, and that's it. There is no seeking, there is no wanting. It's just it's there. So I think that's a big part of it.
That's a great point, and I love telling this story because it's one that I look back on so fondly now. But I was in a long car ride with somebody who also grew up in a Christian household. Mom, super religious, deep in her faith, and her daughter, who I was in the car with, didn't understand why, because she watched her mom go through all these terrible things in relationships and financial struggles and everything, health struggles, and her mom just wake up in the morning singing gospel music and pray before every meal, and always just rely on God, I'll rely on God till the end. And it would frustrate her, and she asked in the car, we started having a conversation like this, and she wanted to know why wouldn't God just reveal Himself? If God created man in His image, why wouldn't He just make them love Him? Looking at it from a human standpoint, that makes sense, right? Because if you could have kids, and you have kids, you just want them to love you. You can't make them. Mm-hmm. But it'd be nice if they never turned around when, angry at you when they're 14 and be like, I hate you. Because that day comes. If God forced everyone to love Him, then there's no faith in it. Then there's no free will. Free will's gone. He wanted to create people so they could choose what they wanted to do. Taking that away takes away the true personal relationship you can have with God.
That's probably a better way of saying what I just said, actually. I think that's a more eloquent way of putting it.
Well, thank you.
So solemn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But I love hearing stories like that. There's so much effort in the world that goes into disproving God, and science works really hard to disprove religion and faith. And I've always said, if science would turn itself around rather than trying to disprove faith and disprove God, maybe actually try to prove how God did things. I think it would be amazing the things they could uncover. Because as a firm Christian, I love science. I think it's fascinating the things we can learn about the universe and the stars and galaxies and stuff. That doesn't make me any less of a Christian. And God made all that. Yeah. And people, a lot of people go, I'm too smart to believe in God. And I'm like, I'm too smart not to.
Right.
It's just to me, God made it all. God did it. And I think it's perfectly fine to believe that and still put some merit into science. You know, it doesn't have to be one or the other.
I mean, I look at science as man's exploration into God's creation.
Again,
and just trying
way of saying what I just said.
Just trying. I mean, because humans are always seeking knowledge and they want to figure stuff out, and then we want to create stuff in that reality that we figure out. And so they'll come up with like this new thing that science has just discovered, and I always think, I'm like, yeah, that's really cool, and it's been there all along, from the beginning.
Right. I mean, and there's also, I know we're getting kind of off topic because I want to tell you a story of something that happened to me here in a minute. But it kind of, you talk about science and stuff and how they're trying to always disprove religion and God and stuff. And one of the new theories right now is it's popular to say we're all in a computer simulation. That's the new thing. And, it's very unlikely that we're living in base one reality is what they say. And, we're almost certainly in a simulation. You can't tell me that's any sillier to say than I believe in God. I mean, like, you're gonna look at me like I've got three heads because I tell you I believe in God, but you're gonna sit here and hit me with but we are living in a computer simulation.
Yep.
Like, if that's what you believe, I'm not gonna judge you. I'm not gonna put you down for it.
Believe what you want.
But you also can't do the same to me.
Right.
You have to give me the same respect.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I saw a post mocking that. There was a guy explaining it. He was like, yeah, we're probably in a computer simulation. And then the guy below it, like, you took that and he was like, okay, so you're saying that there was a game designer and he created this game and we're all a part of it and we're all here and we're all living in that reality? It's like, yeah, it seems logical.
Yeah, and they believe that. They're like, well, look how far technology's advanced in the last 20 years alone. Just imagine in 200 years where we'll be, and then in 2,000 years where we'll be, and then in 2 million years we'll be. Okay, cool. But no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No.
Also, I forgot that story that I told you about the girl. I forgot the best part, the ending of it. She did become a Christian.
Okay.
Like months later, which was really cool.
I think that's great.
Yeah, that was exciting.
I think it's funny. Well, not funny. I think it's sad how much hate a lot of Christian people get from non-believers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost kind of weary to say out loud that I'm a Christian sometimes, and I shouldn't be that way. But you get looked at and treated like you're lesser of a person anymore. It used to mean like you could be trusted at your word and stuff, and now it's like a negative, and I hate that it's kind of come that way. You could say, you say that to someone else, the happy ending of the story is they became a Christian, and people are gonna be like, ugh, I hate that it's like that. But I think Christian people get held to a different standard, and whether it's right or not, that's how it is. But the flip side of that is we as Christian people need to be good examples of what it means to be a Christian.
Yeah. We
can't be hypocritical. We're not going to be perfect, but we have to do our best. And we have to show people that it's not about shoving religion down people's throats. It's about sharing the joy that we have in our hearts with everyone else. I worked in restaurants for a long time, and on Sundays we would fight over who got the church crowd, and it wasn't because we wanted them; it was because we didn't want them, and that's awful. That's awful.
But there's a lot of truth in that too.
There is a lot of truth in that, and it's because the church crowd gets out, they feel all self-righteous from church, they go sit at their tables, they have their little clique, they barely speak to anyone else. They're not overly friendly. They don't tip very well. And it's just, if you are someone from the outside looking in and you're a non-believer, that it's not going to do any favors for trying to get people to convince people to believe what you believe. That's just one example, but I think we as Christians need to be more mindful of how we act in public and show that we're different for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
And be true about it, not fake.
Yes, it's difficult to do. Because I think a big misconception is when people hear that someone's a Christian, they're like, oh, so they're perfect. And then they just immediately try to, what's the word? It starts with D. Oh, I ain't got it. They try to
show all the ways you're not perfect to kind of knock you off that pedestal. And I think Christians kind of do that to their preachers in church sometimes. We think because he's the preacher or they're the preacher that they should be perfect.
Yeah.
When really they're just people like us. I mean, a good preacher is going to be the first to say that they're no better than anyone else. we should all dedicate our lives to our faith if that's really what's important to us. And we should all try to be the best example of Christ's love that we know to be. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to miss the mark. But I think the importance lies in showing the difference between us and the next person. You know, one of the most hurtful things I ever heard was completely by accident. Somebody got in my car one time. This was at my last job, and there was a church bulletin laying in the seat, and he was like, "What's this?" And I was like, "It's the church bulletin." And he's like, "Church bulletin? I never thought you were the type." Like, my heart sank.
Yeah.
I was like, and I thought about that. I still think about that to this day. This was probably 4 or 5 years ago. What in my life made him think that I'm not the type? I mean, true, I don't go shoving my beliefs down people's throat because I don't think that's the way to get anyone to respect you. But I spent a lot of time wondering what I do wrong that made it such a shock to him that I would have a church bulletin in my car. I don't know that I have an answer to that to this day.
Well, yeah, the other thing you got to think about, it's non-believers' perception of that religion.
Mm-hmm.
So you say, yes, a church bulletin. They go, their first instinct is, okay, what's a church person I know? And then they picture that. And maybe it's one of those assholes that comes into the movie theater and they just scream like crap the whole time.
So hopefully maybe in a way it was a compliment. I don't know. I don't know.
You're too nice to be a church-going person.
That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. But I mean, really, that's because once you become a Christian, you start looking into things. It's very different from the lifestyle that you expected it to be. At least it was for me, looking into it. Because I looked at it as, oh, I have to dress this certain way, and I have to speak to people only in this manner, and I have to hold myself to this standard of who I know to be a Christian or whatever.
Right. But
it's more like I'm big on the personal relationship. That's what it seems to be to me.
Right.
So I try to dive deep into that.
I got you. You know, and I think for a lot of people who aren't used to hearing things like that, they can get a little intimidated by some of the terminology that Christian people use, like, you know, personal relationship with God. Like, what does that mean? Or, you know, what is it to be a sinner? You know, they hear these things a lot, but it's kind of like, you know, what is all this?
Mm-hmm.
And it really doesn't even have to be that deep. I mean, you know, if a simple way to say it is if you sin, it just means you do something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, it means you're not perfect. You make mistakes, and everybody's going to do that. And you know, having that personal relationship, it could be as simple as just saying a little prayer to yourself each day.
Yeah.
You know, and just trying to be better and taking time to listen. That's important. You know, turn off the TV and the music and stop what you're doing and just listen to pure silence.
Yeah.
And then sometimes when it's right, you'll hear that little voice, and it's not yours.
Mm-hmm.
And it's wild.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy stuff.
You know, I get chills thinking about it because I've truly experienced that. Something not everyone has, and it's life-changing.
Really?
Yeah.
Can you go into that?
Well, indirectly.
Okay.
Let me segue into the story I wanted to tell.
Okay.
And you'll have to kind of bear with me because it's a very personal story. It's one that I don't tell very often, but I should, because it was such a life-changing moment for not only me but everyone involved in it. That it's one of those once in a lifetime type things. At least I hope once in a lifetime, because I don't know if I can go through something like this again. It was such a big thing. Mm-hmm. But you know, I've thought a lot about this and thankful for this. But it's a hard story to tell. So just bear with me here.
We're with you, Ben.
Yeah, we're here. Here we go. The serious side of Benjamin that we don't always get to see every day. So. Like I said, I was raised in a Christian home, very thankful for that, and got saved at an early age, got baptized at an early age. But for me, it didn't really, I'm not going to say it didn't mean anything, because it absolutely did, but it wasn't life-changing for me like I thought it should be. And I would go to church and I'd hear these stories about people, you know, giving their testimony or their life story, their experience, and it would be this big life-changing experience that really solidified their beliefs for them. And I thought there was something wrong with me because I never had that. You know, really, I was just fortunate that I didn't have to go find it for myself like some people did. But still, I thought that there was something that I was missing because I never had that life-changing moment. And so whenever I got towards the end of high school, I was kind of bullied a little bit, not like extremely, but I wasn't a popular kid by any means. I was overweight, wasn't athletic, was in science club, so I got all the ladies.
Oh yeah.
But I was just that kind of quiet, shy, average kid that could be an easy target. I mean, I was nice to everybody, so I wasn't really, like I said, I wasn't really bullied, but I was not popular. I wanted more than I had out of life, and so because of that, my faith started wavering a little bit. And it wasn't anything God had done wrong. It was just I was just a emotional teenager and wasn't really happy with where my life was. To make matters worse, the people that I would go to church with who were my same age that I'd be in Sunday school with weren't really the best of people either. And whereas I used to keep a Bible in my book bag because I just thought it was cool. Whether it was cool, I don't know, but I did. And I remember one time I was trying to talk to somebody about why I was a Christian in high school, which is the most dangerous place to do it because you're not going to get very far. And I wasn't getting very far because I wasn't very good at talking about it, but I was trying. And this guy from my Sunday school class came in. His dad was actually my Sunday school teacher. And so I looked at him as like, a good person who was going to have my back. And I was like, yeah, tell him, we go to church together. And he just looked at me and said, F you. And he took my Bible and threw it in the trash at Lee Senior's cafeteria. I still have it. It has ketchup all in the pages.
What?
And I just remember like my little world got shattered. And I couldn't believe that. There was another girl in my Sunday school class who I had a science class with, and she thought it would be funny. This was a little before high school. This was middle school. But she actually busted my lip because she thought it was funny. I was just an easy target back then.
Yeah.
And, so a lot of these kind of pathetic sounding things happened to me. And because at that point in my life, I didn't have a voice. I didn't know how to put my foot down and tell people no. But that really kind of affected me in a bad way. And so I stopped going to church. I started fighting with my parents about going because I didn't want to go. I didn't want to be around those people because they treated me bad at school. They wouldn't talk to me in Sunday school. But everybody thought they were God's gift to earth because their parents were big people in the church. Mm-hmm. And that put me in a bad place. And I guess for me, that's the most relatable way for me to relate with non-believing people about hypocritical Christians and how it makes them feel and pushes them away because, these people say one thing and do another. Why would I want to be like them? I felt that. I felt that. I didn't want to be around any of these people. I dreaded going to church. And so I stopped going. And it caused a lot of problems in my family, but I didn't care at the time.
Yeah.
And it's funny how God makes things work. I had another friend in my life who was absolutely not a model Christian at all. We're talking cusses like 3 sailors, does whatever he wants to do, but he went to church every Sunday and played music for the church. So everybody at church thought he was great.
Yeah.
Now in this case, because he was my best friend, God used that to kind of bring me back closer to him. He used somebody who wasn't a model Christian to bring me closer back. So I thought that was kind of interesting because it got me interested in the church music, especially the classic hymns that they play on the piano and the organ, the boring stuff.
Yeah.
Not the contemporary stuff, but the boring stuff, the old rugged cross, the power in the blood, all that. I got to a point where if I hear any of them, I know exactly what song it is. I know the whole hymnal back and front, and I love that. But still, even as I got closer to God again, I still felt like there was something missing because even though that had happened, I never had that earth-shattering moment in my life. And everybody, even believers, have doubt. There's always a part of you that doubts and wonders if you're really right. Are you right in what you believe? You have the faith, and you do believe it. But sometimes at night, when you're going to sleep, your mind starts working, starts thinking, some might even say the devil comes to you at night, starts making you doubt. And that would happen. And I would say, I need something to prove to me. I need that proof, that self-proof, not the hard proof on paper. But
did you get what you asked for?
I did. And I learned to be careful what you ask for. Because the way... and this is where the story's going to start. I'm sorry this was such a long introduction, but it's important. Okay. The way that God showed me he was real was he allowed my best friend to pass away.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old were you?
This was probably about 10 years ago, almost 9 years ago.
Okay.
So I had this friend, and his name was Dwight Morgan. We went to high school together. he was a brother to me. We were closer than my actual brothers. I remember meeting him in 8th grade. We had math class together, and I instantly wanted to be his friend from day one. He was this big black guy in my math class. He was hilarious. Everybody loved him, and I was drawn to him. I was like, this guy is special. There is something about him. I want to be his friend.
Mm-hmm.
And we became friends, and then we became the best of friends, and then we became family, and we were inseparable, me and him. I mean, he was really that once in a lifetime friend that you get. And he was, like I said, he was a big guy, and he had a lot of health problems, and those health problems got worse as we got a little older. And I remember one specific day, I guess this would have been 2014, I got a call from his sister saying that he was in the hospital, very sudden. And I was like, oh my gosh. And she's like, no, this isn't like something happened, he's in the hospital for a few days, he's going to get better. This is not good. Like, he's not awake, and we don't think he's going to wake back up. And so I rushed to the hospital with the girl I was dating at the time. We go to the waiting room, and we wait, and we wait, and we wait. And finally, after a few hours, the doctors come out and go, we don't know if there's anything we can do for him, so we're going to let family in 2 at a time, and you can say whatever you want to say to him, and then stay a second and then leave and let the next people come in. So I'm devastated. I mean, this is more or less my brother we're talking about.
Yeah.
And so his mom and her, I guess his sister went in first. And they come out crying a few moments later, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And then his aunt goes in with somebody else, and they come out crying, and I'm like, oh my gosh. It's just, this is going to be bad. So they finally, they let me go in. And I take the girl that I'm seeing at the time. The only reason I'm even bringing her up is because she's part of the story. And we go into this little room where he's laying on the hospital bed, completely unconscious, hooked up to every monitor you can imagine, and completely unaware that we're there. And so I didn't know what to do. I mean, we only had a few seconds with him before we had to leave. And so the only thing I knew to do was to put my hand on his hand and say a little prayer. It's the only thing I knew to do. And almost immediately, every monitor started going off, and he started crashing, and it was scary. So they shoved us out of the room. They're paging every doctor. They, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I get out to the hallway, and his whole family's going crazy because they don't know what's going on, and they know it's him. And so, again, the only thing I know to do is I grabbed the girl I was dating, I grabbed her hand, and we started praying, the 2 of us. His mom comes over. Now there's 3 of us. His aunt, his sisters, his brothers. By the time we were really praying, we probably had a prayer circle of 30 or 40 people in that hospital. And then something happened that I'll never forget. I'm starting to get the chills. This is where it gets scary. I saw, with my eyes closed, as we were praying, this ball, it was like I had my eyes closed and I could still see the hospital. And out of the area we had just come out of, this ball of energy came rolling out. And it rolled right up to me, right here. And it wasn't good. It was evil. It was pure evil. I could feel it. If hatred and malice were something you could touch, that's what this was. And I knew deep down in my gut that it was a demon, a real demon, not a physical, or not a imaginary thing that we say, oh, the demons. No, this was real. This was there. It was right there in front of me, just like you are. And it stopped, and it didn't have eyes or anything, but I knew it was looking at me, and I knew it hated me. With everything in its being, it hated me. And then it left. And after it left, I don't know how I knew this, but I knew he was going to be okay. And it took 6 months for him to wake up. But he was okay. And when he woke up, the story gets even crazier. At this point, this was here locally, but at this point he'd been transferred to a big hospital because he was more or less in a coma, I guess. And when he woke up, of course I went to go see him right away because I hadn't seen, my bestest friend in the whole wide world in 6 months. And I was like, you know, we were scared. We didn't know what had happened. And, you know, we're glad you're back. And he's like, I got to tell you something. And I was like, what? He's like, the day that you were there in my hospital room and everybody was coming in and y'all didn't think I was going to make it, I saw you guys. I saw you and your girlfriend come in. And I was like, how? You were unconscious. You were asleep. And he's like, no, I was having an out-of-body experience. I was gone, basically, floating above the room. Like, I don't know, but that's what he said. And he said, I saw you come in the room. I saw you put your hand on my hand, and I saw you start praying. And I was like, there's no way. And he's like, yes. He's like, your girlfriend had her leopard print bag. She was wearing her sandals. You were dressed up for work. And it was all true. Every bit of that was correct.
What?
So he had to. He said, as you started praying, a nurse walked in and sat down next to my bed. There was no nurse. So I was like, what are you talking about? He said, she grabbed my other hand and she said, I'm a daughter of Satan and I'm here to take you.
What?
And you know how, sorry, I'm getting like choked up. I'm sorry. You know how the Bible talks about the devil's a liar, and he can convince you to do things that you know 10 times better than to ever do. This demon who manifested itself to my friend as a nurse made him think that what he really wanted to do, made him think what he wanted to do was to go with her. She was telling him things like, you can come rule with us. You can be a leader in hell. You won't suffer. You can just come help reap souls and be a king, you know, telling him all this stuff. Mm-hmm. To the point where he was going to go. And he said at that moment, now at this point I'd already been shoved out of the room and stuff, so it was just him and the demon in there. He said at that moment, I flew back in the room, grabbed his other hand, and shook him too and said, what are you doing? Don't do that. You know better. Stay here with us. You know that's the wrong thing to do. And that's when he woke up 6 months later. Now, I never went back in that room. So I know that our prayers resulted in God sending an angel to save him.
Holy cow.
And then he said that demon got up, walked out of the room, and glared at me and left, just like I saw.
Dang, Ben.
Well, it's not quite the end. It's almost the end.
This is amazing. God.
Like I said, be careful what you ask for.
Absolutely.
I asked for that 1% of doubt to be removed.
Yeah.
I got what I asked for. My friend Dwight, he suffered in the hospital in and out for the next 2 years. No, wait. So this would have been 2012, not 2014. So he suffered for 2 more years. In and out of the hospital, had congestive heart failure. His health continued to decline. And the whole time this was all happening, I would always, you know, we were still friends. We'd joke around. We didn't talk about faith and God a whole lot. But I was always worried that he would pass away. And then because of what happened especially, I'd always be like, so, Dwight, you want to talk about that Jesus guy?
Yeah.
And he'd be like, I'll talk about Jesus when I get better. And I'm like, well, we talk about him now.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, no, we'll talk about him later. And I'd be like, all right. Well, after about 2 years, he called me one day. I was on my way home from work. And he called me and he said, I got to tell you something. And I said, what's that? He said, a preacher came to see me today, and I want you to know I accepted Jesus. And I had to pull over my car because I was so happy. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, he's like, I had to tell you. And I said, I'm so glad you did. He had suffered that big thing that I just said, and then he was in the hospital in and out for like 2 years. He died right after that.
Right after the phone call?
Yes. Well, not literally right after the phone call, but very, very shortly after. It was only a matter of weeks.
Wow.
So I know that God kept him around to give him a chance to accept Jesus as his Savior before he truly had to go and live in hell.
Good.
Really. I know that's what it was. And there's nothing anybody can say to me to tell me that's not what happened. And when that moment happened, when he passed away, and I realized that, it was almost like God directly touched me and spoke to me in that moment. It was like he almost, again, talking about if it was something you could touch, it was almost like he put his hands on me, on my shoulders, and like opened up my eyes. And for a split second, for a very split fraction of a second, I could see his whole plan. I could see everything. It was like a big network, a big web of energy and pathways. And if this way doesn't work, here's 2 other ways to get there. And it was incredible. And I saw it for a split second. That was it. Like, I didn't get any information. I don't have any insider futuristic stuff, but I saw there was a plan, a real plan. And after that, his mom came to know Christ. His sister came to know Christ. The Bible I bought him just years ago ended up with one of the family members, and they accepted Christ. As a believer, the best thing that can happen is when someone passes away, they go to heaven. And because of what happened with him, there's so many people in his family and around him now that have faith that they wouldn't have had any other way. And I know that was God's plan. It was all his plan. You know, we as people, it's easy for us to think we're the top of the food chain. It's easy for us to be entitled and to think that we're it, and to not really accept the fact that there is a higher being. And when you realize that God is in control, he's the boss, he's the master, not us. When you can accept that and humble yourself, it's a hard thing to do, but when you can humble yourself, you realize that it's not about you. It's about God's plan. And he had a plan. And it was to make sure that my friend Dwight didn't burn in hell and that his family has a chance. And it also took away that doubt I could ever have. And now it's something I can share with other people.
That's amazing.
So that story gets me choked up, and it's been almost 10 years, and it still makes me cry every time.
I bet.
But it's, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
I'm glad I could. It's, yeah.
That's a really cool story.
I appreciate it.
I love that so much.
So like I said, I can't prove anything to anybody, and I'm not going to try.
Right.
Because that's not what I'm here for. I'm just here to, on this earth, to tell people what I know and to try to share what I know and to hope that they can have what I have, which is that personal relationship that you mentioned and the happiness that I have. You know, I might have lost my best friend, but I'm so happy I can't even stand it.
Yeah.
Because I know I'm going to see him again.
How often do you think of him?
Oh, every day.
Really?
Every day, yeah. It's been almost 10 years, and I think about him every day. And I probably always will. I don't think I'll ever have another friend quite like him. And I still keep in touch with his family. Not as much as I wish I did, but they're all really special to me. We've all been through something.
That story touches me a lot for multiple reasons. I also lost my best friend in 8th grade, and like I think of him every day.
Yeah.
Even
after all this time, you know, something will happen, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I got to tell Dwight about this. Oh wait, you know, but it's okay because, like I said, if they truly had Jesus in their heart, you're going to see him again. But before we started, I know whenever we were trying to get together to do this podcast, it was hard because I lost my grandma, couldn't meet up with you. Then I lost my grandpa and couldn't meet up with you, and it was back to back. But as hard as that was, losing my grandma and my grandpa back to back right here recently, I'm not upset. I'm not happy about that, but you know, but I am happy because I know I'm going to see him again. There's not a if for me anymore. I know where they're at. They're alive and they're in heaven. They're not going. And that's the very last thing that happened in my story with Dwight. I was kind of sitting back and just thinking about everything that had happened. And a few nights after his funeral, I had a dream. And in that dream, he came to me and he said, yeah. And I know it wasn't a dream because what he said was something I would have never thought of. He said, why are you sad? I'm alive. And I said, no, you're not. You passed away. And he said, no, I'm more alive than you are. And that gives me chills every time. I never would have thought up something like that. Never.
That feels good.
Yeah.
Man.
Because heaven's a real place.
Yeah.
It's not some figurative, imaginary land that we say people go to make ourselves feel better whenever somebody's gone. If you have Jesus in your heart, you turn away from all the bad things, you go there.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. That story is, that's man, you need to write that down and.
You know, one day I'd like to write a book about that one day because
That's unbelievable, dude.
I think
so cool.
as hard as it is for me to tell that story, it's something I think people need to hear.
Yeah.
I don't think you go through something like that to keep it for yourself. And there's been times in the past, and I've told you this, that people have asked me to share that story with them, and I haven't been able to. In fact, I was on another podcast a couple of years back, and it was actually a religious podcast, and they asked me if I'd share that story, and I told them no. These people are very close friends of mine.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about best friends. Dwight was my best friend in high school. This was actually my best friend in elementary school who asked me about this. My very good friend Thomas Wilson, actually. He and I grew up together, and him and his wife are two of my all-time favorite people. And they asked me if I'd share that story, and I was like, I can't. I'm too. It gets me choked up. And they said that's cool. It's some things aren't meant to be shared, but this one is. This is meant to be shared.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, you go through something like that, you need to tell people.
That's me and my mom actually talked about that yesterday, where we started talking about the podcast and talking about faith, and we've had a similar conversation before where I would get tired of people referring to me when they saw me and I didn't know them, or maybe I did like kind of know them or recognize their face, and they would just say, "Oh yeah, you look so good, so happy to see you looking healthy and everything." And they said, then they'll turn. They always turn to somebody beside them that doesn't know me. And they'll go, "He had cancer when he was little." And it crushes me every time. It used to. And it would bother me so much. Because
it's like people knew you as the cancer kid?
Yeah, and that was it. And I don't know why, but it did bother me. Because I didn't look at it in the light of, maybe they're looking at me, because it's mainly older people.
Right.
And people all across
older people
the
like
county.
Kids, they don't know no better.
Yeah, well, that, but I don't know. I'm not old. I've never been old. But
I'm getting there.
From what I've read and from the way that I sort of interpret how they speak and how they act, they're scared to die. Just everyone is, but they're closer to it than anyone else. They need, like, they say they've been faithful their whole life or whatever. But just to see somebody that went through so much turn out okay, it means a lot to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't realize, I don't know if I was being selfish or if I was being prideful or whatever, but I didn't like telling people that I had it. And I didn't like people referring to me that way. And I talked to my mom. My mom was like, she said the same thing you said, where it's a story you have to share.
Right.
Because it inspires people, it helps people, and it is for the benefit of God.
Right.
And I've come to realize that just looking back at what I think is the most important part of your story is the power of prayer.
Yeah.
Which is something that I have doubted far too long and questioned my parents about it all the time, almost every Sunday. Why should we pray if God's going to let happen whatever happens?
A lot of times we get caught up in that instant gratification. We think that prayer is like a magic chant that's going to get you what you want, and oftentimes it's not. I mean, you think about what I said about my friend Dwight. Yeah, I spent years praying for him to get better, but God's plan for him was never to get better. And I've accepted that in a good way, because by him passing away, so much good comes out of that. So much good comes out of that, that I was able to really come to terms with that. He was never meant to get better.
Yeah, that's a hard pill to swallow, because death is inevitable, but it's still the hardest thing that we'll have to face as a person.
Right. It's the unknown.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that I know where I'm going to go when I die, but that doesn't mean I want to necessarily make that transition anytime soon.
Yeah. I did a podcast with the Rubio family.
Okay.
You may remember this. Their little cousin died in a car wreck. 11 years old. And their aunt was torn up terribly. And they kept questioning. They were like, I don't understand the plan for why our 11-year-old cousin had to die. And I didn't know how to explain it to them. But I just shared my story about my best friend dying, and I was like, I didn't understand it at the time. It made me super depressed, and I hated it. And
the hard thing is sometimes we don't ever find out. And that's the truth too sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes not.
Sometimes we don't always find out what the good in it really was or what the plan in it was. But that comes with knowing that we're not the top of the food chain. God still had a plan. We may not be privy to what that plan is, but one day we can ask him.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things I want to ask God. There's a lot of things that have happened in my life I'd like explanations for. But I know that was what was meant to be. Now when I see him, I'd love to know what became of those things, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, I totally get it. There's a lot of bad things that happen to people that they just seem to be meaningless. And that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard. There's not much you can say to someone like that who is going through something like that, and it just truly seems like it was for nothing.
Yeah.
But somewhere, somehow, there was a reason, you know.
Yeah, it was cool. They started, like later in the episode, they started bringing up different positives that had happened after it happened.
Right.
They were talking to relatives that they hadn't talked to in forever. There were some beefs that had been squashed. Now there were still bad things going on because of it, because they were seeing people they hadn't seen, and tempers were still there.
Right.
But I don't know. I hope they're doing good. Because I mean, life is hard, and it's hard for everybody.
Yes, it is.
And I really don't. Well, I say I wouldn't know what I do. I wouldn't know what I'd do without God, but I don't think I'd be here, to be honest.
That's fair. I mean, you've been through things, and you know, whenever you go through hard things, if you don't have something to lean on, where do you go from there? You fall apart.
Yeah.
You know, and some people use their spouse to lean on, and that's great. Some people use family. Some people use friends. That's all great. But those things in your life may not always be there.
It's all temporary.
But God is always going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can always turn to him and rely on him. And true, you may not get an answer as quick as you want it. You may not get things in your time, but he hears prayers.
Have you ever prayed for something and
yes,
it took years and years?
Oh, yeah.
And then
things I prayed for that still haven't happened.
Yeah, but like you prayed for it, and you got an answer, and it wasn't in the way that you expected, and then your memory got triggered back to when you prayed that prayer.
Maybe. I'm sure.
So that happened to me. Because I like you, I was doubting, and so I prayed to God. I just walked through the yard, walked through the woods, and I was like, okay, God, if you're real, prove it.
Yeah.
And it was middle of the summer. I was like, put snow on the ground right now, and then I'll believe you're God. And a decade later, I had my big moment, my big revelation, and I thought back to that day.
Yeah.
And I could see my feet going in front of each other, and I could hear my voice saying, put snow on the ground, God, if you're here. And I was like, in that moment, I was going through this terrifying experience. And I was just thinking, oh, you're so stupid, dude. Here's your answer. Oh, man. It was crazy. But it reassured me. I was like, he hears me. I just got to be careful with what I ask for.
Yeah, you do have to be careful with what you ask for.
God.
He's a lot more clever than we are.
Yeah. He's like, he knows it's all a game down here.
Yeah, it really is.
He's like, the spiritual part is next. You know, you're just kind of dancing around right now.
Yep.
So how has your relationship with God evolved since that time?
Well, that certainly made me a lot closer to him, because kind of scared the life out of me almost. But it also showed me, like I said, when I had that moment where for a split second I saw his master plan almost kind of personified, so to speak. Like I saw it like a map. It just kind of reassured me that no matter what happens in my life or in anyone's life, it's all already mapped out. God already knows what's going to happen, and he already knows how he wants to handle it, and he already knows how to handle us whenever we deviate from his plan. And it just gave me that reassurance. Now, I'm not going to tell you my life's been perfect ever since then, because it hasn't been. It's been life. And I'm not going to tell you that I've been happy every day of my life since that day has happened, because no, I've had terrible days, I've had great days. But it's just given me that reassurance that God's always there to turn to, and he's already thought it all out. He's already planned it all out. He's in control of everything.
Yeah.
And that's given me a lot of strength.
That's awesome.
And that's something that I want to share with people. You know, I would hope that people would be receptive to hearing that and not be so quick to get angry and hateful whenever they hear, oh, I'm a Christian. Because it's not about anything bad. You know, it's God loves us.
I've often wondered why people are so turned away from the Christian lifestyle. And most of the time it is just how they perceive it from interactions they've had with other Christians. But I think the biggest thing is it's the denial and death of self and humbling yourself. It's nothing about you. It's all about Him.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I was thinking a little bit about that earlier today, actually. One of the things that I feel kind of sets Christianity apart from other religions is the fact that it's not it is about you in the sense of accepting Jesus and repenting of your sins so that you can...
It's about your eternity. Right.
But it's not about necessarily your individual happiness.
No, definitely not.
No, I think God wants us to be happy. Yeah, I'm not saying that for a second.
He wants us to be joyful.
He wants us to be joyful. But it's not about us.
Mm-mm.
It's like I said, it's about God.
Mm-hmm.
And other religions, like you look at Buddhism, it's about self-enlightenment. You know, there's a lot of self in a lot of other faiths, and this one is set aside, in my mind, in the fact that it's about what can we do for others. It's about how can we show love for others. It's about how can we uplift God, and really, it's about Him.
Mm-hmm.
It's about God's will.
Yeah, it's very difficult for a sinful human to do, which is what all of us are.
And it's a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
It's humbling. But, you know, also another reason why I think Christianity gets a lot of hate is because of, you know, you look at the whole tolerance movement in the world today. And I'm not going to get all into that and everything, but I'm just saying there's a lot of things that happen in the world right now that are very much against what the Bible says.
Mm-hmm. And
it's easy to be labeled as someone who hates other people when truly you're just following Scripture.
Yeah.
So I think as Christians we have to be tactful in how we approach things that we disagree with. Don't go into situations with aggression, but show people that you can still love them even though you may disagree with what they're doing. You know, but I think a lot of that is kind of why Christianity is seen in a negative light, because we don't embrace a lot of the things that the world does.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the important lessons Jesus taught. I think it's in James. It's James or Roman, where it was, I can't remember the exact wording because my memory's terrible, but basically saying, don't worry about the world not loving you or accepting you. It hated me first. And don't love the world. Don't be a lover of the world. It all goes down to self-serving, and it's just it doesn't help you at all. I think about that a lot. Chris Pratt actually said that in an interview recently, where somebody asked him, it was at some like award show or something,
right?
And the interviewer was like, "Do you feel like you get hate or treated differently because you're a Christian in Hollywood?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, for sure." He was like, "But I'm not worried about that. Like, the world hated Christ first for believing the same thing and preaching the same thing." He said, "So this is what's supposed to happen."
Yeah. And
it's frustrating.
It is frustrating, but it's true. And I've seen some of the other celebrities kind of be outspoken against him and stuff. And I could be wrong when I say this, but I don't think he's done anything to like instigate that hatred. I think it's just kind of been coming out and people trying to start stuff. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But that's the way it's going to be sometimes.
How it is. Would you have any advice for somebody that's thinking about being open to hearing the conversation of the gospel?
Nike. Just do it.
Okay.
No.
Shout out a brand that uses child slaves.
Well, you know me, I always come into the podcast with a sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Nike.
Man.
No, I would say seek for yourself. I think what happens to you when you die is too important of a question to ignore. If you don't want to take my word for what I've said, that's okay. I don't think you should truly take anyone's word at face value. I think you should investigate for yourself. You should learn for yourself, and you should, to a degree, put things to the test. And if you're curious about Christianity, don't let hypocritical people turn you away from it, because there's going to be hypocritical people in every race, religion, creed, lifestyle. It's everywhere, and unfortunately, it only takes one bad person to run it for everybody. So I would encourage people not to let one bad example or a few bad examples ruin the opportunity they could have. And I would say do some research and pray and go with an open mind and an open heart to church and talk to the preacher. Talk to somebody you trust, and just chat. You don't have to jump right in and dedicate your whole life, although I would hope you would, but go seek it out and find out for yourself, and you may just realize you've been missing something your whole life.
It's pretty cool.
It can be. I'm telling you, when you have those moments where you're truly touched by God, it's something you really cannot appreciate unless it's happened to you.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Okay, what's your biggest struggle as a Christian? We'll end on this one.
Well, like we said, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you're perfect. And if you are a Christian, the last thing you need to do is think you are perfect. I think sometimes knowing that I'm not a perfect person kind of gets to me sometimes. Not in a way that I'm trying to be self-righteous or something, but sometimes I can let myself feel like I'm not good enough. I sometimes do things knowing they're wrong. I overeat. You name it. I'm human. And knowing that in my heart that God's real, and knowing His commandments, knowing what the Bible says, knowing right versus wrong, knowing that I am human and susceptible to doing the wrong thing, which is sin, knowing that I'm not able to completely be perfect, in the sense of not doing wrong things, sometimes can get to me. And that can be a struggle, because I do know beyond a shadow of a doubt what's real, thanks to what I've been through. And I know that when you go through something like that, it is life-changing. And sometimes I can get in my own head and, just say, what's wrong with you? You had this once-in-a-lifetime experience. Why are you doing this? That's wrong. Why are you doing that? That's wrong. Why don't you stop doing this over here? That's wrong. And it can kind of bring you down a little bit. But one thing I tell myself is I know God doesn't expect us to be perfect, because He knows we can't be. But I think He does expect you to do your best and to try your best and to try to do a little better each day. That's, I would say, the biggest struggle. And, I don't know why I feel like I need to say this, because this is a little off topic, but it's something that I feel like I need to say. I was talking to some people earlier, or last week, I think it was, and we were talking about how you get into heaven and stuff. And it's kind of been on my mind a lot lately. It's been kind of on my heart a lot lately. And I know there's a lot of people out there, and again, I'm not here to crush anybody's faith, or if you believe something different, I'm not trying to put you down or nothing, but I was thinking about this, and the person I was talking to, I believe he was Mormon or something like that, great person and great family, and they were telling me how in their minds they think that you can get into heaven by being a good person. And that's been on my mind a lot lately, because first of all, in my heart, because of my faith and because of what I've been through and because of seeing God's plan and because of what happened with my friend, I personally know, not believe. I'm scared to use the word believe anymore, because believe means you think.
Yeah.
I know in my heart that you have to have Jesus in your heart. He has to redeem you for the things you've done to get into heaven. I know that. It's something I wish I could show everyone that I know, but I can't. It comes down to faith. it kind of hit me the other day that heaven is a perfect place. It's perfect because God's there. And heaven is absolutely perfect in every way. How can you get in if you're just a good person? Because you're not perfect.
Yeah.
If you go to a place that's perfect and you're imperfect, you've made the place imperfect. You've made God imperfect. You can't do that. I don't know why I felt like I needed to say that, but that's
a good point.
That's been in my heart a lot lately. And I was thinking about how my wife likes coffee with coffee creamer. If you pretend like the coffee's perfection and you pretend like the creamer is imperfection, you start pouring the creamer in, the coffee changes colors. It doesn't stay separate. You can't unmix it. Once you start putting that imperfection in there, it's mixed. It's changed. It's not the same anymore. And I've just been thinking a lot about that this week. And if people, again, I don't know why I feel like I need to say this. Maybe one of the 43 are listening, and somebody needs to hear this or to think about it at least. If you think that just being good enough is enough, and you want God to judge you based on what you've done in your life, I think He will. He will judge you on what you've done in your life.
He will.
And no matter how good you've been, it's not going to be good enough.
Yeah.
You have to have Jesus in your heart.
Yeah. That's the bridge from man to God.
Yeah.
That's the whole story of Jesus.
Right.
Came to spill his blood.
Right.
We can be made right.
Right.
Be made holy. Redeem our souls.
Right.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. There's a lot of other things I was reading about this week too, and we don't have to get into all this right now, but I was looking at just doing a little bit of, like I said, you should always learn more about what you believe and stuff like that. I was doing some research on, how can you trust the Bible? How can you trust that Jesus was ever even a real person, let alone who he claimed to be, and all this other stuff. And I learned some interesting things that, again, I think people should really take some time, since it's such a big question, learn a little bit more about. There's some good points out there that honestly, even from a scientific standpoint, didn't weaken what I believed. In fact, it made it stronger. Yep. And again, just if people are curious, take the time to learn a little bit and see where it takes you.
Yeah. Just, I don't know, it's cool. I've done that too, where it's like, okay, so if everything that I'm supposed to believe in and know is truth is in this one book, how can I trust the authors of it?
Right.
How can I trust that it was interpreted and written down and translated perfectly over the years?
And those are important questions.
Yeah.
And you know why they're important? Because if I didn't believe in the Bible, and you did, and you want me to believe in the Bible, and you come to me, and I think this is where a lot of Christians go wrong, because they're like, oh, you don't believe in the Bible? Well, the Bible says here that God did this, and it says here, so are you ready to change your life? And they're like, no. But if you watch all the Christian shows and stuff, that's always how it goes. They're like, oh, the Bible says that? Well, gee willikers, I'm just going to change.
Yeah.
That's not how it works in real life.
No.
You have to have some outside sources to kind of convince you that it's worth even your time to read the Bible or to read parts of the Bible. And just real quick, I know this wasn't really the point, but just to kind of touch on it real quick before we go on. One of the things I was reading about was about Jesus, and it was about who he was. And now historians are even saying, well, how do we even know there was a Jesus?
Yeah.
And then you have other organizations that are like, yeah, he absolutely was a real person, but we don't know who he was. We don't know if he was who he claimed to be and all that. But there is I think, to me, there's proof there. And the way there's proof there is, one, if you do look at the Bible, the biblical story of the crucifixion, Mary, his mother, her silence at the cross, at the crucifixion, to me speaks a lot. Because I'm, like we were talking about before the podcast, I'm a parent now. I'm a dad. And that little girl means more to me than anything in this whole world.
Right.
If Mary, as a parent, knew that her son Jesus was lying about who he was, don't you think she'd be at the cross screaming and begging, no, he don't mean it, let him down, that's my baby.
Yeah.
But she was quiet because she knew it was true. And that mother's love spoke to me.
Yeah.
Just because I have the love in my heart of my parental instincts. Mm-hmm. And then, it brings up they say that, what happened to his body? Christians believe he rose again. If the Romans really wanted to discredit the fact that he rose again and who he was, they could have just got his body and paraded it all through town. They couldn't because he rose again.
Yeah.
And then people try to say the disciples took it and hid it. Well, they all pretty much died the worst deaths you could imagine. If they died preaching what they believed. I mean, if they were lying about it, surely they wouldn't allow themselves to get crucified upside down and stoned to death and all this stuff just to push a lie through.
Right.
So without getting too much into it, there's a lot of stuff out there that does make you think. And if you don't come to the same conclusions I come to, that's your business. That's okay. But to me, those are things that really make you think and really make you wonder, why would people do these things if it's not true, if there's not truth to it?
Right.
So things to think about.
Those are good points. I really like that. I had heard somebody doing a talk on that where they talked about the disciples, and
if you look into how those guys died, it's awful.
And they all they all spread out across the world at that point.
Yeah.
And we're just preaching the gospel, starting churches,
doing what they absolutely believed with all their heart and soul.
Right. And then the oppressors told them they had to deny that because it wasn't true, and they said, no, it absolutely is.
Right.
And they said, okay, you'll die for it.
Yeah. And not just die, but you're going to die terribly.
They all died
the most
martyrs.
Painful ways they could think of. Now, if there's not some truth there, surely when you're getting stoned to death, or they're driving nails in your feet and stuff, and you're bleeding out, and you're literally moments from death, you're going to say something if it's not true.
Yeah.
Things to think about.
Absolutely. Because I don't know.
You're going to be begging to get off that thing. You're going to do anything.
I'd like to think I'd be able to withstand it. I can't say that I would, but I don't think I could deny Christ.
I would just say, please kill me quick.
Yeah. Like, make this end, please. And just, do what Jesus did on the cross. Why, God? Why have you forsaken me? Why would you let one of your children suffer like this? And then, let it be over. But, dang, that's some pretty terrible death.
Yeah.
Pretty awful stuff.
Yes.
We did a podcast, me and Adam Puckoris, something like that, Puckoris. I hate his last name. It looks tough to pronounce, and it is for me. But I think it's Puckoris. We did one, and a lot of the discussion was on whether or not we think this is close to the end times, because I think that's fun to talk about.
Yeah, it is.
Do you think we're close?
Well, the end times and Revelation and some of the prophecies in the book of Daniel are things that I'd really like to learn a lot more about. I know a lot of people that I talk to and a lot of scholars and a lot of preachers say that we are. I also know that they've been saying that for 100 years.
Longer than that.
Like I said, there's a lot of things there that I'd like to learn more about. There's certainly a lot of things with my limited understanding, and I'll be the first to say I don't know the Bible inside and out like that, like I would like to and like I hope to one day. But from the things I've seen, it does seem like a lot of prophecy is happening or going towards what it says. I was talking to my grandma about this, not the one who passed away, but the one singular grandparent I have left. I was talking to her about this a while back, and she told me an interesting story about when I asked her if she lived through World War II, and I asked her if they thought that was the end times because it was so bad. And she said, some people did. They really thought that was the end of the world. They thought that was how it all ended. And, you had Hitler and you had all the stuff that was going on. And she said one night, her neighbor, who especially thought it was the end times, they lived in West Virginia, and her neighbor one night saw the Aurora Borealis, the northern lights that usually you can only see in Alaska. I guess it was a really clear night, and sometimes they dip down and you can see them. And she took that as the rapture, and she was going hysterical. And obviously it wasn't.
Right.
But I mean, there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the world, and it's a lot of things that the Bible predicted and a lot of things that you could interpret as some of the prophecies. So I think it'd be interesting to learn a lot more about. And I would say, yeah, we're probably going towards the end times. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think we're close. And I started reading more about it just because I find it very interesting. But like you said, people have been thinking it's the end times for a very long time.
Right.
And it happens often. But one of the biggest things for me that is happening now, one of the prophecies that was predicted by the Bible, was the Euphrates drying up.
Yeah.
It's very much left in this thing.
I mean, there's things that make you think.
Yeah.
As I've said, there's a lot in there to make you think. And, you know, it's okay to have questions. I mean, I firmly believe what I believe, but I have questions, you know. And the question I have on the opposite side of that is, you know, Christians believe the earth is only 6,000 or 7,000 years old, whereas science says it's millions and millions and millions, if not billions of years old. You know, one of the questions I have is for God to be an immortal being, 6,000 years of an earth for it to be the end times doesn't seem like very long.
Yeah.
So that's one of those things, again, it makes you think, and that's okay. That's okay to have questions and stuff like that. So I still think we are kind of getting towards the end times, and there's a lot of things like you just said, but I think there's interesting things there that are worth learning more about.
Yeah, I agree with that. Do you have any lasting statements, pieces of advice, a joke?
A joke.
Anything you got.
The heaviest podcast you've ever had, and you want me to end us on a joke?
It was amazing.
I would say, in all seriousness, I know that the topic of religion can be a little boring to some people, and it can be. It's true. I know that it's a scary thing. I know it's an uncomfortable thing to talk about. I know that it's something that's divisive, and I know that there's a lot of emotions that get tied into religion and beliefs and stuff. But like I said a little bit ago, I would really encourage people because what happens to you is it's a big question that deserves you looking into. I would really hope that you would give God a chance. If you're listening to this and you haven't. It doesn't mean you got to jump right into it. It doesn't mean you've got to change your entire life. It doesn't mean you have to change who you are. Just give him a chance. Ask questions and learn for yourself. And then make informed decisions. But if you seek out God, I think you'll find what you're looking for.
Oh, yeah. He's just up there waiting on you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's pretty cool. Ben, I really appreciate you sharing your story.
I'm glad I could.
That was amazing.
I appreciate you taking your podcast, which is usually meant for movie stuff and funny stuff, to talk about this heavy subject today.
And Trail knows we do some heavy stuff.
And I hope that anybody who started this podcast made it to the end.
Yeah,
because I truly hope they listen to all this.
Me too. Well, thank you for coming on. This was great. Always good to talk to you, buddy.
Awesome talking to you, buddy.
I love you, man.
Love you too, bud.